What really happened between Jonathan and Charlotte after they left the stage? They were the perfect pair. Jonathan, the operatic prodigy with a voice that shouldn't have been possible. Charlotte, the musical theater dream with a warm, honeyed tone that melted hearts. Together, they captured the world's attention on one of the biggest stages in entertainment. The judges gasped. The audience erupted. Millions fell in love with their unlikely partnership. But then, something changed. The duo that seemed inseparable suddenly announced they were going their separate ways. Fans were devastated. Rumors swirled. And for years, people wondered what really happened between Jonathan and Charlotte. Did fame tear them apart? Was there jealousy, resentment? Or was the truth something far more complicated? This is the story of two teenagers thrust into stardom together. A friendship forged under extraordinary pressure. And the painful decision that changed both their lives forever. What really happened between Jonathan and Charlotte isn't what you think. It's not often that one gets to witness a duo as strangely well complemented as Jonathan and Charlotte. When the two stepped onto the stage, both the judges and the viewers were blown away by just how well suited they were to each other. What made their partnership work so well was mainly the friendship behind the scenes and a sense of profound loyalty to one another. On the surface, it didn't look like the two would make a great singing pair. The most common critique they faced was that Jonathan's powerful, dramatic tenor was more suited to elaborate singing genres like opera. At the same time, Charlotte's warm and honeyed singing voice was the stuff Western musical theater dreams are made of. And yet, when put together, the two complemented each other like fire and water. This really shone through at their audition. But what has the duo been up to since their time on the show? The answer reveals as much about the cost of fame as it does about the power of friendship. Brought together by a twist of fate, Jonathan Antoine and Charlotte Cicchinelli were both born in Chigwell, Essex in England. While Jonathan had an older sister with a married set of parents, Charlotte's parents divorced a year before she met Jonathan. Charlotte has previously spoken about how she felt forced to grow up early because of her circumstances and hated choosing between her parents, so she would stay with both of them over alternating days. All this while, she had developed a fondness for music after being enrolled in performing arts classes by her mother when she was younger. Jonathan, meanwhile, had been garnering as many musical notes as he could. After enrolling at high school, he found mentors who recognized his extraordinary gift. The two studied music in the same high school, working with the same teacher, but did not consider working together until they were paired up in music class by their school's singing coach. And the interesting thing about this pairing was that it wasn't even for a school event. It was their music teacher's wedding day that they were paired together to sing for. The teacher said that she chose a particular prayer song for both her wedding and their performance because she felt that it highlighted their talents best. And it was incredibly shocking for her to see the pair pop up on television years later. The two continued as a duo for years after that. Before showing up on the big stage, Charlotte was training full-time in musical theater while Jonathan was training classically at a prestigious music academy part-time. Their paths had aligned perfectly. But neither could have predicted what was about to happen next. When Charlotte and Jonathan first walked onto the stage in the show's 6th season, the reaction they received was less than ideal. In fact, many noted that the judges' initial aversion to the pair was strangely reminiscent of their reaction toward another contestant years earlier. And perhaps this was history repeating itself, since that contestant went on to become a globally recognized icon. The pair sang their practice classic at their audition, which earned them more than a few compliments. Although the judges were incredibly impressed by the duo, one judge in particular had something more controversial to say. He advised Jonathan to dump Charlotte, since he believed him to be vocally superior. The pair continued to stay together, but ended up changing their name order over the course of the show. The duo remained resilient, and eventually ended up proving the skeptical judge wrong at a later performance where they sang another duet. According to the judge himself, his initial assessment of Charlotte holding Jonathan back was incorrect, and she actually complimented him really well. In an interview later, Charlotte called the judge a letdown, in the sense that she expected him to be scarier, but he was, by her account, really cool and lovely. All this praise, however, did not manage to make Charlotte and Jonathan win the final. They did, however, secure runner-up right behind another act in 2012. A short while after their time on the show, the duo were ready to move on to a brighter, better scene. It was clear that they had what it took to be successful. And so, as is the case with most acts who display that trait, a major record label swooped in with a deal for the two soon after the show's end. Jonathan and Charlotte were offered a substantial recording contract, and they signed it with the condition that they would both do some musical theater in the near future. Their debut album together was released in late 2012, and it featured new songs and covers, including the prayer song, which the duo sang at their first audition and at the final. The duo also worked with an established producer, and the public lavished them with lots of love as the album hit its peak on the charts just 2 days after being on the market. Soon after the album's release, a documentary following the young teenagers' success since the show was aired. The documentary was a deep dive into their rise to fame, their personalities, and their backgrounds. The two were both still teenagers when the documentary aired and were given the opportunity to travel to Italy and France and complete their musical education, all while talking to some of the most important people in their lives. If this story about Jonathan and Charlotte touches your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. However, the two weren't quite done making songs with each other just yet and released another album a year later. The album was more or less the same as their last, as Charlotte described it, but with more unpredictable pieces. And it too topped charts. This was also the album that started to see them diverge as artists, as the two had their own dedicated solo songs within it. And only a short year later, the fears that skeptical fans had about them splitting up were rendered true. You might expect a dramatic split, given how we usually see such events unfold in the music industry. But Jonathan and Charlotte, always praised for being level-headed individuals, could not have been more amicable in their split. After being approached for solo record deals, the pair decided to release a joint statement to acknowledge the oncoming split. Fans were heartbroken to find out that the two were splitting, but it was an exciting opportunity to have a look at exactly what they would be like without each other. Charlotte was the first to release her studio album in mid-2014, and overall the album was fairly well received. While doing press for the album, she spoke about how the next step for her was branching out into musicals and major theater productions. She ended up graduating from one of London's top drama schools in 2018 and made her debut in the theater district in the very same year as part of an original cast. The singer then went on to become an original member of another major production. She has performed in numerous theatrical productions since then. Amidst it all, Charlotte has been a huge advocate for body positivity and representation in the entertainment industry and recently called for there to be better support systems for theater performers. She keeps her fans updated via her social media accounts, where she shares glimpses of her life on and off stage. Arguably the more conventionally successful half of the duo, Jonathan Antoine has managed to make strides in both his personal and professional life after his split with Charlotte. Though the two barely talk anymore, as he said himself in an interview, he would be very open to a reunion with his old friend. A few months after Charlotte released her album, Jonathan released his own, which featured a selection of classic songs. The album was received incredibly well and effectively launched his solo career into stardom. Soon afterward, he released his second album to equally raving reviews. And a few years later, he performed his first solo concert in the United States. He's performed at many concerts since, one of the most notable being a 3-part concert in Canada where he sang songs from animated films. He's also launched recording projects with various artists and continues to build his international profile. As for his personal endeavors, one of the biggest ways Jonathan committed to change was physically. After a long and arduous weight loss journey that did not escape any media attention, Jonathan managed to lose significant weight. A decision he claims to have made for his health more than to fit external beauty standards. It seems as though both Charlotte and Jonathan are doing well within their chosen musical fields.